Good day, everybody. This is Michael Levitas from JurisQ, a legal network where we bring you different attorneys to answer your questions on law. And today I bring you back Irina Yadgarova. Irina, good day. How are you?
Hello, how are you?
Good, thank you. And of course, we bring you back for trusts and estates and elder law issues because this is what you do. And you see all types of real life examples and stories where people need your help or should have went to you ahead of time. Today I want to talk about how a trust or an estate is such a very important decision that not only affects, of course, your estate, you, but it affects your loved ones, because decisions you make during making of a trust could affect people for generations to come. So you told me off camera how important it is that whoever is affected by these decisions, whoever is making decisions, everybody is together in one room, so to speak, with yourself, with an attorney, so you can really know all the facts, evaluate all the risks, all the pros and the cons, and know how your estate will work down the line with your descendants. So that's why we decided to bring you in for this particular issue. So tell us, first of all, why is it important that all decision makers and people who are affected by decisions are in the same room with the attorney?
Yes, so it's funny. Sometimes people ask me, can my son come to the consultation? Can my adult, daughter or niece or somebody who's very close? And I always encourage that very much because it's very important for everybody, especially the individual who's going to be the trustee, to attend the initial consult if possible. And I actually had a learning lesson myself, which I shared with you off camera. Just last week, I had an individual come in who's the trustee of this woman's trust. They signed all the paperwork. And I actually spoke with both of them numerous times, but for the initial consultation where most of the information was divulged to me by the client, and I gave all of my advice and feedback and explained the terms of the trust, how it works, he was not present for that conversation.
Right.
And so I'll give you the actual concrete example. So it involved the irrevocable asset protection trust, which is a huge part of what I do, how I help individuals in my practice. And one of the detriments, one of the very few negatives of this type of trust and why it's only appropriate typically for individuals who are 55 and up, is that you cannot obtain financing through this type of trust. It's difficult. You could, but only certain lenders would give mortgages or financing, such as Quantic Bank and some others. And it's not as simple as if you're doing it through your own name, and the interest rates are not as preferred.
Meaning
So
if you want to do a refinance, right? If you want to refinance or a cash out.
Correct. Home equity loans are not as simple. You could still get it, but it's not as simple of a process because their legal department has to review the trust. They have to understand it. And for mortgages, for sure, you only have a couple of lenders like Quantic Bank, and their rates are not preferred. So this is why, again, the trust is ideal for whomever's already paid off the mortgage, who's not planning on refinancing soon, right? Whoever's not. So, and 55 and up, because typically you're not going to be obtaining financing as much as a younger individual. And there's other mechanisms to get cash out, but that's beyond the scope of this.
So sometimes you could be too premature in forming a trust.
Correct. And you have to, it's my job, right, as counsel to explain all of these ins and outs to the client. And it was her property solely, right? So it's her, she understood all this, she had no problems with this, but her son, who is a trustee, I guess didn't maybe necessarily bother to understand all of these ins and outs prior to signing. He was the one who wanted to obtain financing very shortly after the signing of the trust. And he was understandably upset that he wasn't aware that this would make it more difficult to obtain financing. And so this is just why it's so important to have all the decision makers in the room for your initial consultation with an estate planning attorney. Because even though, we get bits and there's so much information, so much that I wasn't even made aware of that the client had, because this trustee kind of like de facto manages a lot of her affairs, and she didn't think it
Hmm.
was important enough.
Hmm.
So especially when we're dealing with seniors, where you have close family members who are sometimes calling the shots, it's
Right.
important to have everybody in the room and understanding the entire situation.
Yeah, you're so right, because there may be other facts that the person who came to you as a client is not considering, whereas their kids would be like, wait a second, mom, dad, what about this? What about
And
that?
family dynamics, because I have
Hmm.
another client, right, who
Hmm.
just postponed their initial full consult with me because only one of the daughters was available. They
Right.
wanted that daughter to manage this estate planning process,
Hmm.
but her sister, who's on vacation now, is the one who manages the finances. So it
Right.
would kind of be like a weird loop, you know. So you kind of
Hmm.
have to have all the parties in the room. And
Yeah,
that's why we work also with their accountants. There has to be information that goes out to their
that's a
insurance
hundred
carriers.
percent.
You
Yep,
have to have the holistic approach.
of course. Okay, very good. And also, you said there is another example that you had this week that really showcased how important it is that everybody is on board.
Yeah, it's very sad actually. And it's kind of like the inverse example where somebody
Okay.
should come to an estate planning attorney,
Hmm.
and oftentimes they don't. So in this specific scenario, I had a young child of a physician who passed away, and there was no planning really in the family.
Right.
And I asked, did she know that she was terminally ill? Did she have noticed that she was going to pass away?
Hmm.
So the daughter said, she kind of self-diagnosed. She wasn't, she didn't want to confront the issue. So what was the outfall of all this? It's really harmful to her side, the decedent side of the family, because this was a
Right.
very hardworking woman who acquired a lot of property and titled it with her husband. So it was just, let's say, if properties, and the way that they were titled is her name and his name. And in New
Hmm.
York, even if you don't put as husband and wife or as joint tenants, if you acquire it while you're married, it's considered to be tenants by the entirety. So when one
Right.
spouse passes away, the surviving spouse inherits the property outside of any court process
Sure.
automatically.
Sure.
So
Hmm.
the father ended up with these properties. He does have minor children, and he has this adult child.
Hmm.
And the concern now of the woman's side of the family, the woman who passed away, is that what if this guy ends up getting remarried? It was really her money essentially that purchased all of these properties,
Right.
and it could fall into the hands of this third party who wasn't involved in purchasing these properties, because he
Hmm.
could do as he pleases, right? He can add her name to the
Of course.
property. He can, it's his property now.
Yeah.
So this is why, it's important to have an estate plan. This woman who passed away, she was relatively young. She was in her 50s. And even though some individuals, if they know they're ailing, they don't want to confront these issues, but this is a harmful impact to her children. So this is another example of how important it is to make sure that you're planning your estate,
Yeah.
especially if you have these triggers in terms of
Hmm.
health
Hmm.
deteriorating, or any crucial changes in life.
Yeah, Irina, you brought up very good points here, that estate planning not only can help you get Medicaid, Medicare, but also helps you shape how your hard-earned property can pass down to your one side of the family, the other side. What happens if your kids remarry? Because you don't know what's going to happen even
Second marriages, blended
5 or
families.
20 years from now. So you want to be able to have more control. Now, of course, you can't control what happens to your property probably 200 years from now, but you can control in the near future what happens for the benefit of your family, your immediate family. And that is why it's so important to go to an attorney for estate planning and tell them all the facts, and talk to your doctor, right? Explain what are the dynamics in the family, to whom do you want the property to pass, and then, as we discussed, also get that family involved so they also know what is going on. Unless you want to keep it confidential, right? I mean, if you want to keep it confidential, that's your
Oh yeah,
choice. But
absolutely. That's a really good point. And
yeah.
even in that case that I mentioned earlier,
Hmm.
where the individual should have brought her son along, the only reason she should have brought him along is because they get along and she wants him to do whatever he pleases.
Right.
If this was a situation where it's, wholly owned by her and she wants to call the shots, First, she shouldn't name somebody a trustee that she doesn't, see eye
Right.
to eye with.
Sure.
But when you have it depends on what type of family dynamics would warrant a conversation. And so absolutely, she doesn't have to give notice to anybody, even the
Yeah.
beneficiaries of the
Mhm.
trust.
Mhm.
But certainly when the trustee is signing on to a document, he should know what the terms
Of
are.
course.
And
Absolutely.
these are important points that should be hashed out prior to engaging in the plan.
Okay, perfect. Listen, this is why I love having you on, because not only teaches the law, but you give us real life examples. So when
Yeah,
people
and
are watching
just to
our videos,
yeah,
they see
I just
what could be
I
out
just want
there.
to tie that up by saying
Mhm.
that the ideal plan in that situation was for him to get the financing and then literally a day after to sign the trust. It's not that we
Mhm.
wouldn't have done what
Right.
we did. It's just we would
Sure.
have waited a
Right.
bit longer.
Exactly. Makes sense. Okay, very good. Timing is crucial as everything. And unfortunately, our timing is coming to an end, but we had a very interesting session. And Irina, I hope to have you back again next month with more
Thank you.
FAQs on trust and estates and elder law. Irina Yelgarova, thank you very much. Today we gave general information. And of course, if you want a consultation, you want specific advice on your situation, on your possible estate planning, call the number on the bottom of the screen. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in.
Thanks
Until
so
next
much.
time. Thank you,
Thank you.
Rina. Take care. Bye bye.
Bye.